Hi there, I'm Christina, and welcome to my podcast. Nuanced Beauty is intended to be a spot where I'll capture some varied thoughts and challenge us to hold to our opinions loosely so that we can see the beauty in others and in ourselves. I want us to dive deeper into those everyday topics or those sticky topics and thoughts that we might shy away from or bulldoze over others with our opinions. Because I think if we all thought exactly the same, there would be no need for anyone else. So let's get nuanced. Hi, and welcome back to Nuanced Beauty.
I still haven't gotten a sign-in welcome salutation in yet.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to do our hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, I got to go back and watch Good Morning Vietnam again, and then maybe go from there.
Yes.
Good evening, Nuanced Beauty.
Yes. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for being with us today. And we were thinking through the topic of friendship. So listening to another podcast, a question came up from a listener, and it was related to, does your significant other or does your spouse, in specifics, I think it said, does your spouse, do they have to be your best friend? And this got Bill and I talking, and we'll go into a few different directions, and then we'll also kind of just talk about friendship in general.
Yeah. Well, the thing that, and I don't want to spoil what their take on it. It was a Java with Julie podcast. So if you're interested in other podcasts, they deep dive into some topics. That's another one. But so I won't spoil what they said. But the thing that really struck me about it was the desire that your spouse would be your best friend, and that the somewhat unreasonable expectation that puts. And I feel like in our generation, we were told of marriage that most are going to end in divorce, and if you don't get along about something, well, you're just in that category of the most people who get divorced. So you get married because you have all these things in common.
The before marriage is totally the time where it's like, oh, they're like my best friend. We love to do X, Y, Z, and ABC.
And then you spend some time together.
Yes.
And you realize that, oh yeah, this is like a whole completely other person. And you think, oh, that must mean there's something wrong. Maybe this marriage shouldn't be, because we're not best friends. You're supposed to be best friends, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to be best friends. So if we're not best friends, then maybe it failed.
Yeah, there's a Scrubs quote to this. It's kind of like a daily sitcom quote, a weekly sitcom quote. Of I was told that if it was right, it would be easy. That even if it was hard, that it would be easy, which is super not true at all.
Where there's some movie, and I have no idea what movie, but I'm just picturing this terrible speech by the bride, like saying, "You're my first mate," or like blah blah blah. Like,
I think that's from Wedding Crashers.
It's probably Wedding Crashers.
You are my port and my starboard, my
Yes.
captain and my first mate.
Yes, way to go nautical there. But this idea of this intense connection, and how oh, that must mean you're best friends. And do you have to be best friends with your spouse? And I think you might be able to tell from what we're sharing. We're going to go with no, you don't have to be best friends. But in the spirit of nuance, you totally could be. Or you might go through seasons of feeling like you're super connected and super good friends with your spouse. And then you might go through seasons when you're not feeling as connected with your spouse. And I think adjusting the expectations that you have for your spouse and them fulfilling this role of best friend in your life might be really beneficial to some.
Absolutely, and we have friends that at least claim that. We don't know them that well, but they seem to get together really well. But I think it's an unreasonable expectation that your spouse would be all things to all people, or all thanks to
Mhm.
you as one person. That you know, it's my friend who I watch sports with, and my friend who I go on dates with. Like it's not
And
those aren't
shopping
necessarily the same. And go shopping with,
and
sure,
cooking, all the things.
yeah. Like you have friends that kind of fulfill different roles and different interests in your life.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not reasonable that any one person, spouse or not, would fulfill all of those things.
Mhm. Which kind of like maybe we could from here we could kind of transition into the idea of best friend, because you and I had an interesting conversation
Well,
about the
yeah.
like,
And before we move on from the marriage topic, uh, we were talking about different roles, different things that you might have a friend for. Your spouse definitely can't be the friend that you complain about your spouse to,
oh right,
and you need that person.
he
You,
said that with other language that would make my podcast
yeah, I'm
need a
trying to keep
E.
that explicit line out of the podcast.
Yeah, you
But
can't just complain about your spouse to your spouse all the time. That's not going to go well.
But you need someone who you can vent things to in a safe place where you can say, "Hey, I'm really mad about this thing. I just need to get this out
Right, and process it
and
and both
process it."
like let it go and then also like confirm like, okay, I'm not totally in the wrong, but I'm not also totally in the right.
And you could process in a way that when you do talk to your spouse about something, you can do it without being as hurtful because you've
Yes,
been able to
because
talk it through.
you've let the steam out a little bit.
And you can't be like, "Okay, take your wife hat off for a second, because
And put on your best
I'm
friend
gonna
hat.
say I'm gonna say some stuff, and I need you to not be hurt by it. Can you promise not to be hurt by it? Will you not be mad?"
Hmm.
That's not gonna work.
Yes.
Uh, but that said, 'cause I want to get that out. I categorically object to the concept of the best friend,
Yes.
because of the way that it ranks people in a way that's numerical, but
And
also
it's exclusive.
there's an exclusivity to it. And like when you're in a marriage, going back to the marriage thing, there's a reciprocation in your communication. You define the relationship in
Uh-huh.
your marriage. There's rings and there's ceremonies. There's a ritual to this that we've all agreed and we've talked about over the course of an engagement, and we said in front of everybody that we are in this exclusive relationship.
Yeah,
You
and
do
we're
not
gonna
have the same thing with a best friend.
or you say, "You're my best friend, right?" To leave you hanging.
Yeah, like I've had very good and tight friends, but I've always been really reticent to to use the
Put that
label best
title.
friend, because I've had friends who are very popular people. And so I won't want to be
So
like,
many friends.
there's so many friends. And I value my friends so much, but I can't open my heart up enough to say they're my best friend, knowing that they might not feel the same way about me.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's not the framework
The
in
vulnerability.
platonic friendships that there is in romantic relationships, that we can have that define the relationship, conversation.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. So that makes sense. But then when we were talking about this before, I countered the point like, okay, so we don't want to like get exclusive and we don't want to like feel left out because somebody doesn't reciprocate the best friend status. But we can concede to the reality that we all have limited time and energy, and we have to choose how we spend that and who we invest in. And so we do have those friends who are just like soccer mom friends that you see when you're at your kids like sport events, and then you have those friends who you invite over for an occasional
all right,
dinner.
what was the thing? The front door friend, the kitchen friend.
Yeah.
Do you already talk about that on this podcast?
No.
Okay, go through that.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly, but I was listening to someone share this concept of friendship,
We have no news
and
ideas on this podcast, but we've listened
we
to a lot
just
of other
share
podcasts,
everybody
and we're
else's
just
great
gonna
ideas.
curate other people's good ideas.
Yes, 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 yes. And it was just this idea of like, oh, the level of like intimacy and friendship and the level of effort in it, right? And like giving yourself permission to like have these varying levels of relationship. And like you could have like that person. that comes to the front door or like in your front yard, like your neighbor, and you're like, oh, hey, and you have just pleasantries, right? You exchange a little pleasantries. Then you have that friend who you invite in and you sit down and you have a cup of tea and you might carry out a long conversation and you get like a little more deep than like, how's the weather?
You might hang out while making a meal, like some.
Yeah, like some like showing a little bit about like who you are and what you do during the day in the confines of your house. And then you have that like top tier friend who is like, I would invite you up to hang out in the room while I got ready for a party. Like we could totally be having a deep conversation or funny or dumb or whatever style conversation while we are like getting ready to go out. And it's like it's okay to have those varying levels of like commitment with people.
Yeah, and I think inner and outer circle might be a less hierarchical way of saying that than top tier and bottom tier. But
Yeah.
that said, I'm totally going to say top tier and bottom tier at the next analogy, which is when you start breaking down the NFL draft, uh, teams draft from pick 1 to pick 32, and then all the way down to pick whatever 200 and something. Uh, but players don't fall evenly into like ranking 1 through 200 and something. Uh, so they break, scouts break players down into tiers, and these are kind of the top, top tier players and second tier players and third tier players. And there aren't,
Hmm.
32 first round players,
Right.
uh, and that's going too far away from the metaphor. But uh, it doesn't serve anybody to crown a number one. And to try to get that nuanced, and that all went away with the MySpace top 8 of actually labeling people
Oh,
in numbers.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like picked your top friends to list on your
And
profile.
I never was a MySpace guy because I had the crappy dial-up internet, and when you try to go to somebody's page and they try to upload whatever song they
Yeah.
thought was cool, it always crashed my internet. So I never got into
Oh, I
MySpace.
had a song and like blue background with pretty butterflies
What
and
was your song?
I don't even know.
Oh, you know.
I no, I actually don't. I
Oh.
probably changed it too often. Every
But yeah,
day.
but you have friends that you invested in different ways because you have only so much time in your day. So I bristle with the concept of best friend, and maybe it's just because of my own jealousies or insecurities. That I'm just like, well, it's a dumb idea anyway, because I don't have one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that covered what we set out to cover. Um, you know, Modifying your expectations about friendship within a marriage and it being okay that you aren't the bestest of friends with your spouse because it's a different covenantal relationship, and
Mhm.
it's not just okay, but you could say mandatory to have very close friends outside of your marriage so that you can um, process with them.
Mhm.
And we also covered the fact that best friends are dumb, and those are the two big things I wanted to get out there, that uh, to hold loose the expectations of what your relationships are, and just have an appreciation for what they are rather than holding them up to what you think they're supposed to be.
Mhm. Yeah, and just yeah, that area leaving space for friends to like kind of become what they are and even in different seasons, like it's a
Hmm.
catchy phrase to use like in different seasons, but in college life may look like this, in post college, first career, second career, like having children or marriage or
Hmm.
staying single, like how do you like just keep friendships going and then also giving space for them to change and um like not creating tension and drama because of this ideal or this unrealistic expectation
Hmm.
around friendship. Yeah.
Okay, so shorter episode today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it gave you something to chew on.
And we should probably close saying Instagram. So last week I threw out the email and
Oh yeah,
Will
and
gave
who's
me
gonna
some grief.
engage with an email?
He's like, "Why would you engage with an email?" And I'm like, "Well, not that many people have liked the Instagram yet." So that's why I didn't even think to throw out the Instagram.
We're in the process of hiring a social media intern. So if you know anyone interested in running our Instagram account, we have competitive wages. if you're competing with free. And yeah, so we're gonna
Yeah, if
try
you
to
have
get
any feedback, you got to hit us up.
yeah. And do we already like post the episode on the Instagram?
I do. I put it on the
Okay.
news feed. Maybe I could put a post instead of the news feed or
Yeah, put a
whatever.
post to the news feed 'cause that'd be
People can comment there. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's a good point. And it's at nuanced_beauty. Um, yeah, follow us on Instagram, share with everybody else to follow us on Instagram, and come back for next week.
All right, until next time, y'all.
While we're talking about friendships this week, I thought a great book to throw out there would be Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. This book is a well sold book. The subtitle is When to Say Yes and How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life. They have produced many variations on boundaries. There's a boundaries in leadership, boundaries in parenting, um, and some other ones out there. But the first book, Boundaries, is the one that I read. And um, they mention in here that any confusion of responsibility and ownership in our lives is a problem of boundaries. Um, they get very practical and share a story of this lady named Sherry, and they kind of show a day in her life, and how they mention like trying harder isn't working, and being nice out of fear isn't working, and people pleasing, taking responsibility for others isn't working, and how someone can find it very difficult to take ownership of their own life. And when it comes to friendships and any relationship, whether it be friends or family or your spouse, there's that fine line of what is yours to do and what isn't yours to do. And I think when we assess healthy boundaries, it ends up making our friendships much better too. And really, any relationship better when we can figure out what is ours to do and what we shouldn't be trying to take on. So yeah, hope you enjoy this book. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. We have made it to February, 3 months running. Thank you for tuning in. And as mentioned, you can follow us on Instagram at nuanced_beauty, and shoot me an email at nuancedbeauty@yahoo.com, and rate and share the show. Take care.